On This Week in History.
Sponsored by the Great British Expos.
Home of the UK's largest regional business expos. Find out more at greatbritishexpos.co.uk.
Hello, I'm Little Lord Fauntleroy, otherwise known as Alec Jones Hall, and I am the Chief Executive of Great British Expos. So, welcome to Paul Waite doing On This Week in History.
We're here, the outstanding Paul.
So, starting off today on This Week in History, round one. We have the most facts ever in Aspen Waite history today.
Hit me.
So, without further ado, going right back into antiquity, 479 BC, the Persian forces led by Mardonius were routed by the Greek army under Pausanias. This halted the Persian invasion of Greece.
Good.
I think
like
it was
Greeks.
followed up with another Greek victory very soon afterwards, and that basically saw the Persians off for a bit. 476 AD saw the end of the Western Roman Empire. So basically, Rome had for many years up to that point been besieged by the Vandals, the Goths, and the Visigoths, and somebody else, Huns maybe.
All the Germanic tribes, basically.
I think the last the last Western Roman emperor was actually executed by the Vandals, whoever it was.
A pagan.
Yes. So that was the end of that. One of the great moments in English history, or English and Welsh history for sure, 1346. The Battle of Crecy, and the king at the time was Edward III. And
one of my favourite kings ever.
I now get, just to get in order, I now get my notes typed up, and the typist has typed commoners used for the first time, which is obviously not what it said. So I'm not entirely sure. I don't think about
commoners.
I think it's probably it's either cavalry. No, it can't be cavalry. It must be. Must be cannons, I think, probably.
I don't know.
Anyway, Battle of Crecy, one of the great battles in English history, probably top 5, definitely top 10. So basically, against superior forces. Yeah, it was actually. I think it was some sort of firearms. So effectively, the Welsh longbow basically bested the new technology.
Yeah.
1526, the Battle of, I think you call this Mohacs, is Mohssacs because it's Hungarian, and the Hungarian Empire was conquered by Suleiman the Magnificent, who you have to say, regardless of what you think about, where he came from, in my opinion, as a historian. So probably if you were talking to Paul when I was 17 or 18. Because that's the sort of thing I studied, I would have said probably at that time, in terms of respect, I'd have gone Gustavus Adolphus II and then Suleiman the Magnificent II to him, in terms of what I consider to be a great leader and
he was
a great tactician and
definitely great at all those things. Yeah,
I don't know if you remember when we went to Malta, we saw a load of stuff about Suleiman.
I was too young really to appreciate it at the time, but obviously he was one of the great leaders of Istanbul. Formerly known as Constantinople.
One of the things that I'm a bit confused by, and I did, if I had time, I did mean to do some research into this because it didn't make any sense to me. In 1640, Charles I signed a peace treaty with Scotland, which rather perplexed me, bearing in mind that his father was James I and James VI. So I was sitting there thinking, why did Charles I? So was Charles I no longer the King of Scotland?
That's what I think is really strange. Like, he is essentially Scottish by lineage.
Well, his father was Scottish.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why did he have to sign a peace treaty with Scotland? So,
but the thing is, I think what a lot of people don't know is actually, obviously, there was a lot of internal war and struggle in Scotland throughout history. It's not like I think a lot of people think it's just was like Scotland versus England, and actually, say that the Highland chiefs were sort of doing their own thing, and then you had other lords doing their own thing, and there was a lot of
the Campbells, for instance, the Lowlanders against the Highlanders.
Yeah.
Anyway,
lots of strife.
1682, obviously the great man Halley, who Halley's Comet is named after. 1682 was the first time that he observed the comet, which became named after him. Undoubtedly the most famous comet there has been.
Ever.
Little fact for me here. I was quite shocked by this, actually, in a good way. 1804, Alicia Thornton was the first female jockey in England.
All right.
And she rode at the Knavesmire course in York.
Okay.
Which is probably one of the best 5 flat racing venues, I would say. This is just interesting, that. 1825, Portugal... So this is, there's a bit of a theme going on here. 1825, Portugal recognised the independence of Brazil.
Oh, yeah?
It's effectively, South America was carved up, I think, by the Pope, maybe.
Okay.
And he basically said... So basically was sort of arbitrating to the Portuguese and the Spaniards. He basically drew a line and he said, right, everything this side is Portuguese and everything on this side is Spanish.
Okay.
I said there are things doing the research today which I hadn't appreciated, such as 1828 Uruguay gained independence during the Brazil-Argentina peace talks. So Uruguay was actually part of Brazil.
But the Uruguayans speak Spanish.
Yeah, I'm just telling you, this is true. So
that's interesting.
Again, not quite sure.
Did they used to speak Portuguese, do you think, then?
Maybe. Not sure. We'll find out. 1831, Michael Faraday demonstrated the first electric transformer, which obviously,
Optimus
would be
Prime.
right up there probably in key inventions. If you think about what life would be like without that.
Without Optimus Prime and the Decepticons.
Yeah, although I was talking on a program this week about the fact that North Korea, for instance, doesn't have anywhere near enough electricity. So even during the day, even in the capital, the power will go out. Or I was watching a thing about the National Gallery in Pyongyang. And suddenly there's a power cut and there's only like one light on because they don't have... they basically spend. True this. They spend 50% of all their money on the
military.
Army.
Yeah.
They have the biggest standing army in the world proportionately. 1 million troops and 8 million North Koreans are on standby.
Wow.
Which is
they do parades often, don't they?
A staggering statistic. 1833, something to be very proud of. The British Slavery Abolition Act gained royal assent. So we were, I think, about 20 or 30 years ahead of the Americans.
At least.
And something to be proud of, I think. I think the final fact we'll do for this part, it's a source I like, actually. 1837, Leon Perrins manufactured Worcestershire sauce. Leon Perrins were actually pharmacists.
Were they?
Yeah. I like Worcestershire sauce, I have to say.
Me too.
And I also like Worcester sauce flavoured crisps. So there we are. Hope you enjoyed that first part. Rattled through those. Most interesting ones.
On this week in history with outstanding Paul.
What happened there? Why was it so quiet?
Oh, it was a little
Didn't like
quieter
it.
today. Sorry about that, Paul.
Anyway, welcome to the second part of On This Week in History this week.
Yeah.
And we're going to start off today in 1842. And the UK and China signed the Treaty of Nanjing, which ended the Opium War.
Ah, yes.
So for those of you who haven't heard me talk about this before or weren't paying attention at the time, effectively Britain made, in today's money, billions of pounds by basically encouraging very poor people, mostly in China, to be opium addicts.
Yeah.
Which is actually quite scandalous if you think about it. Britain and China was effectively at war, and the wars were known as the Opium Wars. Britain's motivation was purely money,
opium,
based around perpetuating
money for the empire,
its dodgy trade.
Drug dealers.
So 1875, quite a famous event, really. Captain Matthew Webb was the first person to definitely swim the channel, being watched and
documented,
definitely not aided, etc.
Yeah.
So his name that's gone down in history. 1883, seismic sea waves created by the Krakatoa eruption created a rise in the English Channel 32 hours after the explosion.
Wow.
So to put this into perspective, this is 18 years before the end of Victoria's reign. So trying to think what's going on in the world. Just about to start the Boer Wars, maybe something like that.
Queen Victoria's having tea with an
Rorke's
Indian.
Drift just happened, I think.
Zulu.
Yeah, somewhere around then. Moving on. This is an interesting fact, I think. 1896, chop suey was invented in New York by a chef of the visiting Chinese ambassador.
Interesting.
So chop suey is very much like chicken tikka masala, which is in fact chicken tikka masala is not eaten by
They don't eat
indigenous
it in Asia.
Indian people.
Yeah.
So this is.
I have to say, I quite like chop suey though. A nice beef chop suey.
I'm more of a chow mein fan myself.
Yeah.
So rattling through these. Here. Sorry, I shouldn't give a clue, should I? 1896, the UK defeated Zanzibar in a
Freddie Mercury.
In a 38-minute war.
Yeah.
Do you know what that was? The world's shortest ever war.
Oh yeah, well I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
It's nice to think that it's over in half an hour though, isn't it? That's like a lunch break at school.
Do you know what was over? The recording rights to Queen 2.
Like, no, it's ours. No, I think you'll find he's from Zanzibar.
Yeah, it's interesting today, isn't it? You get some weeks. So I looked at this and I thought this is a hell of a list to get through, and we are probably over halfway now.
Well, let's
and we're only
shoot the
3
breeze.
minutes into.
Smell the roses,
so
man.
I think we have license to
Shoot the breeze.
talk a bit more about some of them if we like
I just
it.
want to say, because obviously there's a lot of people out here that won't even know what we're on about the reference. Freddie Mercury was from Zanzibar.
That's right.
So for any of you out there thinking like, well, you guys obviously know what you're talking about, we don't. Freddie Mercury was born in Zanzibar. His actual name was... Can you remember?
No.
I know that my friend out there, Josh Ayest, would remember.
Something like Kemal or something like that. Or sort of
No.
name.
I can't quite remember it. Anyway, he moved to Britain. A lot of people don't know that he's actually Indian. But yeah, he's from
Farouk
Zanzibar.
Bulsara.
That's it. Farouk Bulsara. That's it.
Yes. So in 1898, it was the formation of the Northern Rugby Union, Huddersfield, which obviously is effectively became the Rugby League. So effectively break away from mainstream rugby union.
Yeah.
And that will play really funny with 13 players, no line-outs. I have to say, I used to think that rugby league was the people had more skill, and there was a time. So when I, probably back in about 1980, maybe through to 90, I would say rugby league players were better than rugby union players, certainly in terms of skill. But I don't think it's true.
No, I don't think so. And also, from a personal perspective, I really enjoy scrums, lineouts, etc. Ruck smalls.
1898, Caleb Bradham had invented a drink which he renamed Pepsi Cola.
What was it called before? Didn't have a name. It was just called My Drink.
Because I don't know what the answer is, I'm just going to go.
It was called My Drink for
It was called My Fizzy Horse Drink.
Ah, nice horses.
My Lovely Horse.
My lovely horse.
Digressing slightly, I watched 2 episodes of Reginald Perrin.
Oh, did you?
Last
Reggie.
week.
Classic
Absolutely
British
wonderful.
comedy.
One of the greatest, if not the greatest, comic actor of all time, in my opinion, Leonard Rossiter.
Oh, on that note, I just want to do a quick shout out to Sean Locke, who yesterday died of cancer.
yeah.
Really sad about that.
Yeah, 62 or something, was he?
59, I think. Only, I didn't even know he had cancer, but yeah, just real shame. I thought it was one of the greatest British comics. Always made me laugh.
58 years when he died.
What was that?
He was 58 when he died.
Oh, was he?
Away, yeah,
1910, Japan changed Korea's name to Chosen, or they wouldn't have pronounced it as that, but Hosen. So obviously Japan. Again, I don't think this is something I am just going to warn you. I'm going to get into a rant later.
All right.
One of my usual topics. If you can work out what that is, guaranteed for Paul to have a rant about a certain country.
Germany.
Yeah. How did you guess? So Japan was mischief-making, empire-building for a long time before the Second World War, notably fighting against China, Korea, and Russia. So they had many ongoing disputes with the Russians. They actually conquered Korea in about 1908, I think it was. So they rather I don't know what you call it. Well, I suppose it's the thing victors do, isn't it?
I think it's really interesting what a 180 Japan have done since the war. They are one of the most forward-thinking, peaceful countries in the world nowadays, really, aren't they?
Well, they're almost like an American 51st state, you could say.
Yeah.
Something like that. Very fluffy bunnies. A bit weird, to be honest. Anyway, last. Well, they are. They're disturbing.
Dragon Ball Z.
There's something you might want to talk about in Pandora's Box one day, but we'll come on to that.
Okay.
So the final fact in this part of On This Week in History is in 1914, New Zealand forces captured German Samoa. So basically, they took advantage of their proximity to that island. At that time, Denmark, for instance, and Germany actually had several possessions in that sort of part of the world. And of course, Samoa is now divided between American Samoa and Western Samoa. And of course, have become very great rugby nation.
Yeah.
So that was the second part of On This Week in History. And moving on, before we get to the final bit, we have one of the great songs, Killing Joke and Love Like Blood. And I'm losing my voice.
On this week in history with Outstanding Paul.
Welcome back to the final part of On This Week in History, and joined as always by Callum, who's very much my sidekick on this.
Hello.
And of course the trusty Drew, who does occasionally know something.
Cardinal
He
Drew.
did impress me with his knowledge that Suma was a Japanese province.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the oranges Satsuma are named after a province in Japan.
Oh, I knew that. Satsuma. Yeah. I thought you said sumo.
We actually did cover that on This Week in History, which is why I remembered.
Right, yeah.
Right, so 1916, Germany declares war on Romania. Romania, in turn, declared war on Austria-Hungary. And Italy declared war on Germany.
Yeah.
So that was quite a...
It's a mixed affair.
Yeah, it was very, very, very interesting, the politics
Yeah.
at that time, all the way from probably, about 1870 to 1945.
So Italians and Romanians at the time had strong allegiances. Obviously, Romanians get their name from Romans, don't they? Romanes.
Yes. 1939, Chaim Weizmann, who I'm pretty sure was born in Dublin, would you believe, declared that Palestinian Jews will fight for the Allies.
Okay. Yep.
So it was quite a big thing. 1942, this has surprised me. Cuba declared war on Japan, Germany, and Italy.
Okay. Why Italy?
Because they were on the same side.
Oh, okay.
They were the Axis powers, weren't they?
No, of course. Yeah, right.
Axis of evil.
Axis.
Yeah, you wouldn't declare war on two of the countries and not on the other one, would you?
I guess not. That'd be a bit strange, wouldn't it?
Although, what's interesting is just against that, something, a very interesting fact to spread to you people. When America went to war in 1941 after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, they only declared war on Japan. So they actually weren't at war with Germany for something like 6 months, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
So
it was only after Winston Churchill kept trying to convince Eisenhower to do it, but the Germans made the fatal mistake, a little bit like in Russia. They kept sinking American trade vessels. And America finally said, right, that's enough. That's all the inclination, that's the last thing we need. Like to make us join.
So carrying on the war theme, 1943, the Danish Navy scuttled its fleet. So why do you think they did that, Drew?
Scuttled their fleet.
Think why would they do that?
Assuming you know what scuttling means.
No.
It means when you sink your own fleet.
Oh,
Yeah.
you sink it?
You
Oh,
basically
God.
sink your own ships.
Because they would rather sink their own fleet than give it to someone else.
The Germans.
Yeah, the Germans
there
had
we
taken
go.
over Denmark, so rather than
Yeah, so
hand
they
over
basically-
their navy,
They sank their own fleet rather than give them the ships to the Germans.
Fair
because they
enough.
were good, honourable people, and they knew that the Germans would then use that navy to attack the British and stuff like that.
So something I can say. So I watched an outstanding film last week called Rifleman,
Right.
which is a Latvian film production.
Yeah, I'm
One
gonna
of the
have to
best
watch
films
that.
I've ever seen. Beautifully shot.
Interesting country,
And
Latvia.
anyway, the reason I say that is, so I was saying to Drew, more people watched that film in the first week than in Latvian film history.
Wow.
And I thought it was magnificent.
So what's it about?
It's about a 16-year-old Latvian who joins the Russian army. His mother is killed by the Germans. Come on to my theme on that. His father was a decorated war hero, sniper. He was a sergeant major. They basically go to join up, and the boy is told he's too young, and the father's told he's too old. And basically, the father says, "My wife's dead. The Germans killed the wife. Please let my boy fight." And the father goes in with his 17 decorations for bravery, and basically says to the guy who turns him down, "Go and talk to the commander." And the commander goes over and basically says, "What a great honour it is to meet you." So the father becomes the sergeant major of the boys' regiment.
Sure.
Oh, wow.
Just absolutely. Anyway, apart from the fact it is a magnificent film, one of the reasons I said that in context with the scuttling thing is obviously something that's been accepted, I suppose, and was done in the war, is they would kill. So they killed all their own livestock rather than let the Germans have them. So they actually killed all their chickens, their cows, burnt their crops.
I have a lot of respect for Danes and Norwegians. Their actions during the war were very, very honourable, commendable. Yes. And it shall never be forgotten.
Quite right.
To all you Danes and Norwegians.
1948, the British liberation of Hong Kong from the Japs. So one of the great atrocities in the Second World War was carried out by the Japanese, who basically went into the military hospital there and slaughtered all the nurses and all the invalids, people who were in their beds, and they made no difference to the Japanese, which does rather make you wonder, which is something I meant to have a serious conversation with you about sometime, Callum, about is it really possible for people that were capable of doing that becoming the people they seem to be today, or is it endemic in their culture and it's just sleeping? Do you see what I mean?
I actually genuinely feel with Japan they have done that 180. I think a combination of maybe being honest with themselves mixed with Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Talk about making you see the light of day. Do you know what I mean? I think that Japan has become a genuinely pacifist, decent country. I think they obviously probably respect in some ways the more decent parts of their samurai ancestry and culture. Well, no, because they carried that samurai mindset into the war. That's why they committed suicide, for example, because under samurai way...
samurai were honourable. They weren't.
Yeah, but under samurai way of thinking, you would say you would commit suicide rather than get taken prisoner, which is why they kamikazed.
1952, Germany and Israel reached an accord about the recovery payments. This is basically Israel basically said, you killed 6 million of us, you beastards. We want a shed load of money.
Yeah.
I think it's true to say that the Germans never really, how can you make reparation for something like that?
Systematically.
And we'll come on to this.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I actually do have people, Germans who are friends of mine, but I think in terms of understanding the true pattern of history, I think there are things we're going to talk about today that people will be surprised about, I think.
Yeah, I think treat everyone like an individual. So regardless of where you are in the world, treat everyone as an individual. But learning this history is very important.
1958, George Harrison joins the Quarrymen. Do you know who they were?
I'm assuming a band.
The Beatles, really.
Oh, right.
That's what the Beatles were called before they were called.
I read an interesting article recently about the guy that played the drums. It must have been for them.
Pete Best.
No, was it Pete Best was in the Who, wasn't he?
No, Pete Best was the original drummer for the Beatles.
Was he the guy that left and now he really regrets it because obviously then they made it?
No, he wasn't left. He was kicked out for Ringo Starr.
Right, he was
very acrimonious.
Oh, right, yeah.
There were two members of the Quarrymen, Sutcliffe and Best, who didn't end up becoming...
Right.
Anyway.
Beatles. They didn't end up becoming Beatles.
One of the great things for me, 1964, Mary Poppins premiered.
Ah, yes.
And it's significant to me for several reasons. One is obviously it is genuinely a brilliant film and very uplifting. So talking about great films, that would be up there.
Sweet.
The other thing is, as you know, being a great lover of Julie Andrews, absolutely shocking. It's amazing how something that happened so long ago can still upset me to this day. So Julie Andrews played the lead role in Elisa Doolittle in My Fair Lady on the London and the New York stage. To critical acclaim, she won all the major international acting awards for that. And then when Hollywood decided to make My Fair Lady as a film, they cast Audrey Hepburn as Eliza Doolittle, despite the fact that she couldn't sing, and a lady called Marnie Nixon, who was a very famous singer but not a star,
So she basically
did the voice. Anyway,
Makes you wonder why.
No, but what is wonderful about this is so it gets better. So running concurrently with this, so Julie Andrews has just been rejected and told that she's not box office enough, I think, to play Eliza Doolittle. Walt Disney come along and go, "You're perfect to play Mary Poppins." And what is brilliant at the Oscars, Julie Andrews and Audrey Hepburn are up for best actress, and Julie Andrews won.
Good. That's justice for you. That,
I don't know. I think it's just a great story.
Quick question for you. I'm sure you probably know. So, did The Sound of Music come after that?
Yeah, Sound of Music was 1 year after it.
Right. So she established herself as a leading actress, then got the part in Sound of Music. Right. So.
1979. I remember this ever so well. And as you know, the cottage that we used to own in White Parish was 6 miles from Romsey, where Mountbatten's home was.
Lord Mountbatten?
So in 1979, Earl Mountbatten was blown up by the IRA.
With his 2 grandsons?
Near Sligo.
With 2 of his grandsons?
Earl Mountbatten was probably Prince Charles's closest. Was very close to him.
He was like a father figure to both Prince Charles and
I think Charles in particular.
I think Philip was extremely close to him as well.
So anyway, 2004, one of the great sporting achievements by Britain, in my opinion, in history, was Kelly Holmes won the 800 metres and 1500 metres gold medals in the Olympics at Athens. So I can remember being so happy because I'd followed Kelly Holmes' career. So she's a great example of someone who was forever getting injured and blaming not doing very well on that. And then she actually had her day. It was just marvellous to see how just having... So when she wasn't expected to win the 800 metres. So you can see when she wins, she's like, my God, I can't believe I've won. And then, of course, when she runs in the 1500 metres, she's now running as an Olympic champion. And she piddles it, because she's obviously now... I know I'm the best runner in this field.
The thing is, when you are that high level of an athlete, when you're pushing your body to that extreme, it is very easy to get injured, and I do very much sympathise with her because.
Right, so we're going to end up talking forever here. So I'm going to do these 2 facts about so the wrong way round. 2019 discovery of the world's largest child sacrifice site, which is the Chimu culture in Peru, and I know you and I have talked about child sacrifice.
It was always going to be South America, wasn't it? It was always going to be South America. So and finally, I'm just going to see how long safely we can talk to about this, because it'll take me a little bit. We have in 2018, can you believe this? 2018, Germany hands back the human remains of Namibian Herero and Nama people that they murdered during the 1904 to 1908 genocide. Whoa.
So obviously one of the reasons which is noteworthy about this is one of the things which you hear a lot about, especially in today's woke culture, where people don't know what they're talking about the shame of our colonial past. Now, of course, we actually abolished slavery years. I think we were about the 3rd country in the world
any
to do
other
it.
European country.
But all the big powers by far ahead of everyone else.
Portugal, Spain,
and as Churchill himself said, on the hill, the British influence is a benign and positive influence. And I think if you were to interview Gandhi, for instance, when he was alive, he actually told Indians to fight for Britain in the Second World War.
Yep.
He sang the national anthem. Do you know that? He actually sang the national anthem. It wasn't, I think you find that if you talk to an educated Indian today, they will acknowledge that the quality of their culture and their education system they owe to the British.
Well, yeah, and obviously a lot of them choose to come and live here now.
And then, you compare that, for instance, with 2 countries that come to mind. Belgium, their King Leopold was infamous. I think he was actually maybe even put on trial for war crimes at the time. So Leopold of the Belgians basically was renowned for atrocities against the Belgian Congo, I guess it was then. And the Germans were equally as bad. So they... and I think what's important for people to remember, and I know I was ranting about this last week, is the Germans didn't just start committing genocide in the Second World War. They did a number of horrific things in the First World War. In The Rifleman, for instance, there's a scene where the Germans launch a chemical attack for the very first time, which goes against all the rules of war.
Yes.
So there we are. So that was On This Week in History this week. Hope you enjoyed that. And before we get to the end of the show today, we've got a great song from Duran Duran and It's Planet Earth.
On This Week in History.
Sponsored by the Great British Expos.
Home of the UK's largest regional business expos. Find out more at greatbritishexpos.co.uk.